Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So hello again. I hope you're doing well. The teaching this kind of a virtual retreat is a kind of what a strange experience in many ways. And one of the challenges I have is how to gauge the quantity of teaching and the types of ideas to a mixed group of people, many of whom I don't know. And like teaching one-on-one is obviously much easier, because if I'm teaching a person, I'm looking at them and I'm seeing, oh, this word doesn't work, or that word doesn't work. Oh, this word does work. Okay, they can pick up on that. And then I can pursue that idea through dialogue. And then I know it's effective because I can see both their body language and their affirmation. Or if they're confused, I can see, well, that's not the pathway I should go. Now, obviously, I don't have that opportunity with all of you. So sometimes I look at the screen and I see a practitioner who's been at it for 30 years. And I know they've got all the groundwork, and I can say something and oh, yeah, I remember that. Very easy. And then I look at another, like how many, I have 25 on the screen now, and there's 249. So I can't see everyone. I get really confused. Paul, sorry. But then I'll look at someone who is maybe new to the practice. I'll look at their face, and they'll look totally confused at what I just said. So it's an interesting thing to teach, because if I'm in an in-person retreat, I can see the faces of the people, and I can get a sense that, something is moving well or something isn't. I could just close my eyes, but then I don't think, I'd probably just be quiet. That might not work. Anyway, so if I'm confusing everyone, then you can be aware of confusion. That's the practice. So sometimes I use too many words, and sometimes because I think I've just developed an intuition that some of the words that we use in traditional Theravada Buddhism become kind of like, oh, yeah, I know that, Sakti, I know that. Or, oh, yeah, right understanding, I know that. And we don't reflect enough sometimes on these things. So I try to introduce maybe different words to bring up the same idea, really, but to perhaps provoke the mind a bit, or stimulate the mind into a more reflective attitude, rather than just, oh, yeah, I know that, believe it, and kind of go on. Because a teaching which has been handed down with canonical words for 2,500 years can become kind of dead, because, yeah, I know that, I've heard that. So that's my sort of evolved methodology, I think. I'm not sure, but that's my intuition. So some of the questions are, like the nuances of language I use, are they necessary? Well, if we just go back to basics and what's the purpose of the teaching, you could say that we as human beings have potential. The enlightenment of the Buddha points to that potential. The enlightenment of Ajahn Chah points to that intention. The enlightenment of other beings, of other traditions, points to that potential. That potential manifests as both, I would say, experientially with Ajahn Chah and others. It manifests as deep peace and deep compassion. So that's my sense of human possibility. And that human possibility from our teachers is encouraged in us by them to say, you can do this too. You can do this work and realize this possibility. So that's on the sort of aspiration part of our spiritual life. And then the methodology is, quite simply put, that the reason we don't touch this deep peace and deep compassion is because we don't understand. Avijja paccaya sankhara. It's not that we're bad or stupid or anything like that, or that we have bad karma and we can never realize these possibilities. It's just that we don't understand. So ignorance and the dispelling of ignorance is primary to understanding and primary to the practice of reflection and mindfulness. Because if I try very hard, but my trying is grounded in not understanding, then the result can't be good, because I'm just coming at it in the wrong way. So right understanding is foremost, and sometimes right understanding is, like the Pali is samaditi, which sometimes translates as right view, and I don't particularly like that translation. I like right understanding, because sometimes, for me, I don't know about you, right view can imply a kind of intellectual position or dogmatic position. There's right view and there's wrong view, that kind of thing. But right understanding for me is when I understand something, it's effective and it's right in that way. So I understand, just basically, I understand where the dhanasala is and where I go for the meal. I understand that and I go there. It's not a viewpoint. It's true. It's true in that way. And so right understanding in this sense is that you understand why you suffer, why your mind gets caught up, why you don't incline to peace, why your attention inclines towards confusion, whatever it might be. And then if that's understood, then you can set about practices and spiritual work to rectify those habits or those wrong tendencies and come to the same kind of realization the Buddha has or Ajahn Chah has. So the beginning of right understanding, I would say, is Luangpor Sumedho's very direct and obvious statement. It's like this. Now that understanding is not an opinion, it's an experience. It's existential. When Luangpor says it's like this, what do you have to do? Well, if you think about it, then you're just thinking. But if it's like this, you have to stop. You have to stop and notice what this moment is like. It's like this. And that's not a judgment. That's not an attempt to get another kind of experience. That's not a rejection of this experience. It's what we mean by awakening. So that's the idea of samasati, the awakened mind. Right understanding. I understand it's like this. And if I can continually remember that posture, that attitude, then I can get sustained moments of clarity. And so meditation practice is the skillful use of posture, technique, and circumstance to try to get sustained sati, sustained right understanding, sustained awareness for longer periods of time. Okay? And you could do that with the breath. You could do that with metta bhavana. So it's not an attempt to attain to anything. You might, and you will see things, and you might have wonderful experiences and insights, but the methodology itself is to sustain this. It's like this, right understanding, for long periods of time. And you can see any activity you do. Like if I just stand by my window and I observe bird life. And I don't have to make any comment about it, but I have to be present. And I observe and I observe, I observe. Ah, look, they do that because of that. Some kind of insight arises. I understand bird life in some way. And that's not because I was looking for an insight, but I was present and witnessing life so that insight could arise. I could see causal connection. I could see when this happens, there's that result. When this isn't there, that isn't there. So I was, Venerable Amar Sri was giving me a foot massage yesterday, and we could see the groundhog. Like, groundhogs are cute. They're really cute. It's just this ball of fur with a little head sticking out of it and the tail. So the groundhog was on the lawn and maybe like 100 feet away from the window. And I told Amar Siri, watch this. And I went, and boop, the groundhog ran away. I said, look, I've trained the groundhog. Now, I have some understanding of groundhogs now, right? That's because I've observed them. I've observed them. I've observed bears and so on. So in the same way, we have there's all kinds of animals and creatures and ecologies and situations that are coming and going in our stream of consciousness, not just in the external world, but obviously the internal world. And within that stream of conscious events, we have emotions and thoughts and memories and perceptions and ideas and resentments and hopes and fears, the whole 9 yards of complexity that we experience as human beings. And what's important about all of that is why do we get caught by stuff? Why do we get obsessed by stuff? Why does the sense of self become so strong? Why do we get alienated from others in strong ways? Why is all this anxiety happening, whatever it might be? And so then as you witness the flow of change, you start to introduce the right understanding of teaching. So at first you have the right understanding of just awakening, and then you take the teaching, and the teaching is to incline us towards the peace of the mind, towards the deep compassion of the heart. That's the purpose of it. Its methodology is called non-attachment, non-grasping. Non-grasping or non-attachment to what? To the changing flow of phenomena, both inner and outer. So I'm meditating and I'm practicing. It's like this. And I bring up into that, it's like this openness and presence. I bring up some teaching, some reflection. And I might bring up anicca. Luangpor Cha's teaching on, he would say, uncertainty. So that becomes right thought. Not thought which is just an opinion, a Buddhist opinion that everything changes. No, it's more a contemplative or reflective perspective on life's experience. And the perspective isn't arbitrary. It's given to us by the Buddha and his disciples. So I decide from my readings and my study and my listening to teachers, okay, I'm going to try to reflect on anicca sanya. I'm just going to use that throughout the day. Now that's quite difficult to do, isn't it? It's easy to get caught up in my emotions or get distracted by interesting things on YouTube, or that's quite easy to do. And that's always the mind, as we say, going out into the objective world and seeking excitement and interest or getting frightened. And now what I'm trying to learn to do is practice non-grasping, non-attachment. Because in non-grasping or non-attachment, I can still see the flow of phenomena, but now I'm no longer going away from the center of witnessing out into the object. I'm staying at the center of witnessing and knowing the changing nature of objects. And as I do that, I see that even though they're changing, this sense of witnessing takes me to silence, takes me to peace, is somehow the doorway to my real home, where the Buddha was suggesting, Ajahn Chah's suggesting, we'll find liberation or freedom or whatever way you want to look at that, right? Now, that seems fairly ordinary, I guess, I don't know. But what the difficulty is, of course, is that what arises is wanting certain experiences and not wanting other experiences. I don't want pain, I want pleasure. I don't want boredom, I want interest. I don't want doubt, I want confidence and such like. I don't want loneliness, I want intimacy. I don't want 40-degree weather, I want 30-degree weather. So wanting comes up within the flow of experience, and that's natural. So wanting is not wrong. Wanting is necessary. If I haven't eaten for 4 days, my wanting is saying, come on, get some food in there. Or if I'm thirsty, or I'm cold, or I'm hot. So there's nothing wrong with wanting. But when wanting is not understood, then the mind is continually preoccupied with sense experience, trying to get it right, trying to get it perfect, trying to get it comfortable, trying to get it balanced, trying to get it safe. And the teaching on uncertainty or anicca is that you won't find safety or security or permanence, everlasting, in those experiences. You will find some kind of nominal security, so pay for your insurance. Make sure your doors are locked. You will find some nominal sense of comfort, so get yourself a good chair. That's a good idea. Or a nice meditation cushion. That might help. But that won't really liberate you. It'll make life reasonable. So make life reasonable. Have a good meal, but don't think that food is the liberation of suffering. So you create a life as good as possible. So you create a retreat as good as possible. And then within that witnessing, you begin to witness not only change, but wanting things to be different than they are. And this capacity to notice unfulfilled desire is I would say it's an advanced human possibility, wouldn't you? And most people, well, we have a chance to, like let's say maybe when you did a university degree, if you did a university degree, that you had to forego certain comforts and pleasures in order to achieve the result of getting a degree. So you gave up some desires for the sake of other possibilities. So now in witnessing, like, you're sitting for half an hour, you're sitting for 45 minutes, how much of that 45-minute experience is going to be pleasant and fulfill your desires? 5%? Right? Is it going to be like really, really neat for the whole 45 minutes? Well, good luck. Because experience itself is fragile, isn't it? But what you can have confidence is that the witnessing is always possible. That's always possible. So if you begin to see, well, what's always possible is the witnessing of change. Rather than trying to change things to my desire patterns, what if I just witness whatever goes on? Like or dislike, happiness, unhappiness. What if I do that? And if I do that, then the desire mind does its thing. It likes, it dislikes. So you're sitting in meditation and it feels like you're not getting anywhere. That's an object in consciousness, a thought and a perception that I am a hopeless meditator. That's all it is. But it can seem very real. And then I think about it and I get lost in it. Or I feel that I get restless. And I want to move, and I want to shift, and I want to leave, and I want to have a sandwich, and all of that. And I witness that. And then I have some little bit of peace of mind, finally. Finally, after 3 days, the mind goes nice and silent. I think, yes. And then I'm lost again. Oh, no. And all this is going on. And this is just anicca. This is just change, phenomena, conditioning other phenomena. And all the time, I'm practicing right understanding. Right understanding is, it's like this. Success feels like this. Confidence feels like this. Doubt feels like this. I'm really progressing in my meditation, feels like this. I'm a basket case, it feels like this. And on and on and on. And you can see now, by taking anicca as your reflective right understanding, it's not a belief, but you're actually using it. You're using it. Then that very reflection constantly comes into play around the movement of the phenomena of life. And that's hard to do. It's very hard to do, to continually bring up anicca sanya. And the word sati, mindfulness, is usually conjoined with some sense of reflection. So anapanasati, mindfulness with in and out breathing. Anicca sanya is like the perception of change. So it's not, as I was saying earlier, it's not just functional presence. It's a presence which is imbued with the suggestions from the Buddha and disciples. So what would happen if you did that for a year? Now that's sort of ups the game, doesn't it? It's not like you notice that the weather's changed. You say, oh yeah, weather's changing, and then you go back to thinking whatever you're thinking, but you're actually now bringing up right effort. So right effort is to bring up this sense of reflectiveness and then practice that, which is a way of thinking about samadhi as well. Sustained presence, sustained reflective capacity around anicca, say, in this sense, and doing it for a long time. You can see that there's effort, there's mindfulness, and there's some kind of composure and collectedness of mind, samadhi. All three are kind of working together. And then you have to just try it and see the result. You can't know that unless you've actually tried it. And that's where a kind of, like, one of the questions that came up was, do we need self-discipline? And I was thinking about, is it self-discipline? I think it's a work ethic. It's more about like I always go back to my analogies of furniture making. But if I'm making a piece of furniture, and I just finished this lovely stool, brag, and the way I work is I can see, okay, if I'm going to do this, I've got to. I don't have to, but it would be good if I got it done to this stage. There's an obvious stage there. I get that done. Sometimes I have to work an hour or two more to get to that stage. But if I get it there, then I'll know, okay, that stage is done. And then another stage, and another stage, and another stage, and then the piece is done. I enjoy it. In the same way, I think that's more, I don't think that's maybe it is self-discipline, but I see it more as a kind of work ethic. And this stuff that we do called meditation, it's often not fun. It's not like drinking cappuccinos all day or something like that and eating donuts, right? So there is a sense of work involved, but it's not. It's something that's interesting. So for me, working with wood and machinery is very interesting, and it's a puzzle, right? And it's a puzzle I have to solve, and then I have to resolve with my hands. Well, if you can look at your own inner workings from right understanding rather than judgment. So if you have some issues that you're suffering from, can you change it from judgment or trying to get rid of it to one of interest? Can you be interested in your own suffering? Sounds odd, but how else are we going to understand the conflicts that we experience in our heart if we're not interested in them? If we just distract them or blame them or whatever, how will we ever understand? So I think interest is some sense of right effort. How you make effort. If I make effort just to get rid of things, that's not going to work. And so there, like, you can see how right effort is a sort of open-heartedness, and that's where like metta bhavana comes in, right? An open-heartedness to the very fears I have, or the sense of wanting to control others, or jealousy. Like, let's say if jealousy comes up, and that's not a very nice state of mind, and you might feel quite guilty about jealousy, like, oh, I shouldn't be jealous, but that's not interest in jealousy, that's judgment of jealousy. Maybe you're having trouble with your kids, and actually this morning you hate your kids, and you're not supposed to hate your kids if you're a parent. That's bad news. So then you suppress that, like, may they be well, but inside, you're saying, God, I wish he'd go away. And if you're not honest to that, whatever it is, then how can you be free? But if you're interested in that, interest isn't a judgment, it's right understanding, right? Right understanding. Okay, this is what I'm experiencing. What's it really like? And if you then employ within that sense of interest, you employ anicca sanya, on this will change. Okay, it feels very permanent right now. This is never going to change. Now this will change. Then you start to understand why this takes a lot of patience, because the momentum of these factors of constriction and contraction in the heart are not just little sparks, but they're actually powerful energies, very powerful. They come through us from our past conditioning. We have an interesting possibility. We have an old tent that we've used for our big gatherings. The tent can hold 100 people, like a marquee, and that marquee is now pretty much gone beyond its life, and we've purchased a new one. And next year we're going to build a meditation hall, but we'll use it in the interim. And so we're trying to figure out what to do with this old marquee. And we've just found out that one of our friends, a friend of his, works with Canadian soldiers who have come back from Afghanistan and are suffering PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And they have a gathering place in one of their officers' homes, and he's leaving the base and he won't be available. So they don't have a meeting place, but they have a piece of land. So then the idea was to give them the tent and the platform and let them set it up, which is really lovely. But they have to take the floor apart. And so a lot of these guys are bikers filled with tattoos and all kinds of lovely things. And I thought, well, if we can get them here, we can give them food and take care of them and show them that they're loved and cared for, and they'll take the floor apart and take the tent away. Now, why I went there was just to distract you a bit, because too much Dharma gets boring. But thinking about the power of our karma, think about someone who has PTSD. We're very conversant with that now, and like some of the care workers now in hospital, they're going to have those kind of results. So you can see someone who's been intensely caring for people in ICUs, in COVID ICU. We had one friend, a Bangladeshi friend, came here, and he works in ICUs, and he says wearing all that equipment is so uncomfortable and so hot and so exhausting, and then dealing with this stress and so on. You can see someone like that comes into a meditation, they're going to have a momentum of negativity which is going to come up. Maybe they did some medical mistake, or they're just angry because they had to hold the anger down, whatever. So witnessing change doesn't mean it's going to be fun, but how else are they going to allow this, what we call vipaka kamma, to be liberated from the mind? So if we've had conditioning in childhood, it might not be that wrong, but all of us picked up habits to survive, and then they're grounded in fear and desire, whatever. And so I think the maturity of the practice comes in saying, whatever, it's changing, rather than thinking, if I notice change, all of a sudden I'll be happy. And so you begin to see what really metta bhavana and patience are about. Metta bhavana is really accepting some of these difficulties that we face. Like myself, as I always say, I had a lot of social fear, which I could never figure out. It took years and years and years of being patient with it. I'm so happy now that it was conscious and I had a way of being with it. So you have right understanding, beginning with it's like this. Then you start to have right thinking in terms of it's like this, yes, and it's changing. Anicca, not a belief, but a reflection. And that to do that, you need to make effort, right? You need to have presence, sati, and you need to have sustained presence and composure, samadhi. This is one way you can look at it. And then if you sustain that, what happens is insights will naturally arise, panya. And that panya feeds back into right understanding, correct? The right understanding gets deeper, more profound. And so you have the ideas of sati sampajanya, mindfulness and wisdom combined. So it's a very logical path. It's actually very, very clear. It's not a belief system, but our emotions are not logical. And the desire system is not logical. It's habitual. And oftentimes you just have to sit with unfulfilled desire. So the one of the best analogies of that is the skin, the rash analogy. The skin rash analogy. You probably heard about that. But you have, like, the example I always give is poison ivy. We have poison ivy and poison oak more on the West Coast, but here we have poison ivy. And it's a leaf that puts out a toxic chemical. And if you rub the leaf, your skin will break out in a rash, blisters. I had the unfortunate, when I was a teenager, I was out in the woods somewhere and I slept in a whole field of this stuff. And I was almost dead with rashes. But the thing about poison ivy is that it itches, skin rash. Now, the thing about itching is when you scratch the rash, it feels great. It's just so exquisitely pleasant. It's very, very pleasant, very pleasant. And especially if you're taking a shower and this thing is just, and you scratch it. Problem is, having scratched it, you've broken open the blisters and you've spread the rash to twice as much now, okay? And it still itches. And it's still very pleasant when you scratch it. But at some point in your relationship to poison ivy, you realize that you have to forego the pleasure of scratching for the long-term freedom from the disease, correct? And that's the whole thing about desire. Desire can bring pleasant results, but the pleasant results beget the need for more pleasant results. So I decide then, okay, I'm not gonna scratch. And then the itching comes up. And then I say, well, that was a stupid decision. And then I scratch. But then, no, that's not working. The rash is getting bigger. So I put some chamomile lotion on it. And then I just grit my teeth. And no, I'm not going to scratch, because the consequences of scratching are much worse than the pleasure of scratching. I have insight into the consequences. I begin to practice restraint around that which is difficult to restrain. Right? Now, I hope none of you ever get poison ivy, but if you look at some of the habits of mind that we have, you can see that analogy works. So let's say one that we all get caught into. Let's say you feel resentment about someone, and your mind starts to rehearse how you're going to tell them something. I'm going to really tell them. I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them. I'm going to really. And you rehearse it and you say it to yourself. And something he says, don't. You've done that so many times. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Another voice says, no, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to tell them. And you tell them. You idiot. You're a fool. You're no good. And then you walk away and think, oh, no. And it gets all more complex and more difficult. That's itching and scratching. Right? The itching is wanting to hurt the person, basically, wanting revenge or whatever. That's not like dialoguing something. Dialoguing something is different. It's like, can we talk about this? That's fine. But that, that urge to stab someone, that's different because that's coming from the place of wanting to hurt. And it's a nice, pleasant feeling, actually. If someone's done you a bad turn, if you think about their downfall, it can be a very pleasant feeling. It's perverse, but that's the way it is. And then if you go for it, you don't feel good about it. It gets socially more complicated. Take worry. You have a problem, practical problem. You think about it. You've thought about it enough that you've got no more parameters to put in there. Done. Not done. Future's unknown. Things might not happen. They might happen. And because of the habit of fear and the habit of worry, you start to think. And then you think it through, like, yeah, okay, that's good. And then 10 minutes later, the itching comes up again. And what's the itching? Ah, yes, but you forgot about maybe this would happen. And you start thinking again. That's scratching. And that feels good. Yeah, that feels good. Scratch, 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 scratch. Conclusion. And then you stop. Yes, but you forgot about another thing that might happen. And then that's itching. Scratch, 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 thinking. And you could do that for days. Itching, scratching, itching, scratching. So in the in the witnessing of change, you have the desire to not have the unknown, in this case, to not have fear, to have confidence and security in the future, but the future is unknown. So you have to be very mindful there, don't you? So the worry comes up. You say, this is what not being sure feels like. And that's uncomfortable. That's like the itching. That's uncomfortable. And you stay with that, which isn't saying that you can't think, but here you want to work with the habit of worry. And no, it feels uncomfortable. And this is anicca. This will change. And each time you put in the perception of anicca, that gives you distance. And you are the witness now, rather than the person in that narrative. So anicca sanya, the contemplation of anicca, leads to non-attachment, is non-attachment to some extent. And that, as you abide in witnessing, these things do cease. Desire does cease. The itching does cease. The itching and scratching cycle begins to cease. And then the mind has more and more natural sense of harmony because it's not, these vipaka kammas don't come up. They don't arise anymore because the disease has been cured in some kind of a way. That's a very good analogy. So of course I'm scratching my hands right now, but I've used it oftentimes. And so look at your own, the way your mind works. And is there a kind of itching, scratching in thought? Maybe you like to complain. That's a good one. People like to complain, and there's lots to complain about, right? You complain about the government, about the weather, about your partner, about your kids, about your kidneys, or whatever you want to complain about. But is that not like itching, scratching? And that becomes a habit. Complaining feels really nice. It's a nice kind of scratching, but what it does, it's not in itself immoral, but it always takes you into, it preoccupies your attention. Your attention is not available for the peace of the heart, the unconditioned. So this idea of being preoccupied with thought is not immoral, but it will be counterproductive because you're not available to the peace of the mind. You have to be available. So anicca sanya creates that availability, creates that possibility. All right, I think that's lots to think about. So maybe I could close the meeting and look at some Q&A.
หันทบยังธรรมาคถายาสาธุกรังทธามาเสสาธุสาธุสาธุอนุโมทามิ
So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll read them all out, and I think we can answer them in one go. Referring to the recorded session on 18th July, I recall that Ajahn was explaining why we should examine the reason we meditate. Is my understanding correct as captured below? The deathless, the unconditioned, must be in the present. It cannot be in the future, as the future is conditioned upon time. Therefore, we meditate in awareness of the present moment. The present moment is the key to the deathless, the unconditioned. This in awareness of the present moment is the same awareness of bodily sensation, of mind objects, of sankhara feelings, the stillness of being, not becoming the knower, and so on. Luangpor, is it important for a meditator to differentiate the meanings and nuances of these words that Luangpor uses? Awareness, knowing, consciousness of. Do these words have practical implications when it comes to the practice of sammasati? Dear Ajahn, can you speak about mindfulness? Why so important in meditation? How to strengthen it in everyday life? Dear Luangpor, I often hear the words mind and heart used in many Dhamma talks and want to better understand the differences and when to use one or the other. Some Ajahns say it's the same thing, and sometimes I read that the mind is the knowing, intellectual part, while the heart is the emotional part, like compassion and love. So it seems to me like the word heart is a subset of the mind. What are your thoughts on the two words? And Sukhihotu Luangpor, appreciate your precise and concise guidance on awareness and trust. Does the Eightfold Path encompass sati, in sati from the mind level, and how does this help in linking Dhamma understanding? So hopefully what I said kind of covered a lot of that. So like the first question, the deathless and so on, if you haven't got a background in Theravada Buddhism or some transcendent spiritual perspective like Advaita Vedanta or Sufism or something like that, the language like unconditioned, uncreated, unoriginated, unborn might be very difficult. You might have, what are they talking about there? So that's why if I was talking with someone one-on-one, I would say, does that language click with them? If not, I'd use other language. But what this person refers to, I think that's what I'm trying to get across. I'm pleased with the question in that way. In the talk I just gave, I used the word preoccupied. Okay, so when my attention is preoccupied with sense experience, and that's mostly thought, that preoccupation means I'm kind of in the realm of birth and death. I'm in the realm of change, and I often have to be there. I have to take care of I have to live in the world. But if I'm only there, and I don't sense that there is something stable, grander, possible, which is sort of behind, or the language gets difficult, that preoccupation doesn't allow me to notice this. But if I just can let go of my preoccupation with sense experience and just abide as witness, and I have faith and trust in that witnessing, then that opens to the transcendent realization of what we call the unconditioned or nibbana or whatever it is. And it's very difficult to sustain that non-preoccupied stance of witnessing. It's very easy to be preoccupied with thought, as we all see, and experience. And so the mind going outwards is the problem. knowing the mind is the end of the problem in this sense. But again, if you're new to this, I could see what is he talking about? So you can always go back to, why am I suffering? What's the cause of suffering? Oh, I want life to be other than it is. Okay, let go of the wanting. Easy, but not easy. And so the nuances of the words I use, again, they're not so important. What's really important is you just understand that the life is like this now, and that you sustain that and trust in that to see how life actually works and how suffering arises and ceases. So I enjoy language, and sometimes I use too many words, but sometimes it's helpful just to have some different perspectives. And then why is mindfulness so important? Well, if I cannot be present to the way things are, I cannot understand them. And understanding is the crux, isn't it? And then the question about mind and heart, that's quite a common confusion in Theravada Buddhism. So the word is citta, correct? Venerable Amasiri over there, citta. And how would you translate it?
The traditional translation is mind or heart.
Right.
It could refer to both.
Right.
But I would just say that it's knowing, awareness.
Okay. Venerable Amasiri is more than well versed in Sanskrit and Pali. He's studied it for 12 years. So I always refer to him. So the word citta gets translated as mind/heart. It used to be translated as mind, I think, in the early Victorian texts. Is that right? Yeah. Now you see the word heart used, and in Thai they use jit, and Thai like the Luangpor Chah would say jit wang, the empty heart or the empty mind. So for the Thais, I think it's probably easier because in Thai you have that word jit, and I guess you have a sense of it. But when we get it as English speakers in an English translation, you get heart, mind, and you think, well, it's emotion, it's intellect, what is it? So Venerable Amasiri's sense of it was the knowing or awareness itself. But also he and I have been discussing, well, isn't there a kind of, well, what is the heart component of awareness? Is awareness just functional presence, or does awareness have some sense of Brahma Viharas in it? And that's hard to get across in language. So I wouldn't necessarily differentiate that mind is intellectual and heart is emotional. I would say there is a conjoining of that, of right understanding of the Brahma Viharas. It comes into kind of one place. And in the Indian traditions, quite often it's just expressed as love. But in English language, love can mean romantic love. It can be a very emotional thing. So then you have, like Luangpor Sameda would say, now is the knowing. And I struggle with the definitions of that. But for me, it seems that metta bhavana and awareness and knowing, they're all really one piece. And then we tend to chop it up in language. So not when you hear a teacher use that language, just try to stay to their references and just let them open up the talk in their definitions, and realize that another teacher might use the word in a different way. This is important. You have to kind of get the way the teacher is talking about something, and not think that the words are absolutes. Words are not absolutes. They're kind of relative to the teacher's understanding and to the culture and so on. So I can see the word mind, heart being used, but the best is really that it means awareness. But I would enrich awareness with all these other qualities as well. But that would be the most simple now, is the knowing. So when the Thais say jitwam, the mind which is free, or the heart which is free, you could use heart, you could use mind, both would be okay. So perhaps the best thing is just keep it as awareness itself. That might be. And then a scholar might say, well, you did wrong for your Dhammo. And I'd say, okay, that's fine too. So a kind of pragmatic way of looking at it. And then that last question about sati, I think I kind of, hopefully I answered that. So this is a difficult question. When the faith is shaken because of some unwholesome deeds that some of the Sangha members have done, how to build that faith again? Well, if it's a Sangha member that's like a monk or a nun, then you have recourse to address any wrongs done to the larger Sangha. So say if in the forest tradition, one of our monastics does something which is immoral as opposed to insensitive, people can be, teachers can be insensitive, everyone can be insensitive, and that's just part of relating to people. But if it's a moral issue and it's a power issue or whatever like that, then the lay people always have recourse to address it to the larger Sangha, because anyone in our forest tradition is related to a larger Sangha. They're not just independent teachers. Independent teachers, that's different. But for us, we have a large body of monastics, and we have quite strict protocols about interrelationships and teaching and speech and all of that. And it's quite appropriate to, if something is truly offensive, to address it to the senior members of the community and see what might be done about it. But if one doesn't want to be so public about it because it's so painful, then you have to realize that when we take refuge in Sangha, you can't be in a person, because people are disappointing, unfortunately. So the Sangha represents, hopefully, a high sense of impeccability and aspiration. And we want to imbue that in our own hearts and minds. We want to be in that way ourselves. So then you have the difficulty of attachment to teacher, and then the expectation from the teacher, and the disappointment from the teacher, and so on. So you know, if it's not a moral issue, if it's a communication issue, it's a style issue, it's an issue of personality. Say, like some famous monks, say in Thailand, I know they have reputations of being very gruff, you know, very, very kind of fierce and forceful. And that seems to work in Isan culture in the Northeast, but it wouldn't work in Western culture. You know, people would say, well, what's his problem? So that could be that cultural difference. But then in terms of your own faith, like, am I in this because of that person? Am I doing this work because of another person? To me, that makes no sense. I'm doing this for this guy. It's like, it's not selfish, it's self-preservation. So if someone disappoints me, I might lose faith in them. I might lose faith in their organization, but do I ever not want to be free? I always want to be free. Do I ever not want to practice truth? I always want to practice truth. So if it's faith in an institution and that sours, that's okay. I mean, that's life. You have to find another place or another teacher. But then, okay, having said all of that, like, what am I going to do? Drink a bottle of whiskey or eat 60 cupcakes to compensate? You know, obviously not, right? So what is the refuge? We come down, what is the real refuge? What is there? It can't be another person. It cannot be another person. It can't be. So then you become more cautious maybe around teachers, or cynical. Is that going to be nice? Buddhist monks, they're all a bunch of that's not a happy state of mind, right? Because it's my own heart now. So then the issue becomes disappointment and betrayal. And betrayal is a very, very, very difficult state of mind to witness to, because it's so hurtful. It's so very, very hurtful. So if you have betrayal in marriage or betrayal in business relationships, someone cheats and a partner cheats on you, runs away with the money or whatever it is, those are very, very difficult because your psychological system is based on some kind of known security. This is secure. This is real. This I can trust. This I can trust. And then when that's shattered with betrayal, then your whole psyche gets kind of confused. Wow, what can I trust? Who can I trust? How can I trust? And then because we are social beings, you need systems of trust. Then you go back to internally, I can trust in the precepts. I can trust in my own integrity. I can trust in my intentions and keep working with that. And then seek out Kalyanamitta, who you can talk with and talk through this betrayal so that you can make it conscious in yourself, what's going on, and make it more objective. And that's why Kalyanamitta are important, because they can support you in vocalizing this betrayal or disappointment. And if you can vocalize it, it becomes more objective. You're less the subject of it. You can see it more. And then having to live through the betrayal means it comes up a lot. It comes up as resentment or anger, or how could they do that, or self-disparagement. And then we say, now your practice is tested. What is your practice really about now? Okay, you've been thrown into hell, and okay, what can you do with that? How strong are you with that? Because you have no choice. You have no choice. And so then this will change. Oh, this is horrible. I'm going to kill that. This will change. Oh, I'm a terrible person. It's all my fault. This will change. This will change. This will change. And if you can sustain anicca sanya, then you're practicing mindfulness of Buddha Dhamma, rather than being the person who's betrayed and stays cynical and resentful for years and years and years and years. So resentments come up. And resentments are very powerful, because resentments are in terms of itching and scratching, resentments are like, if I feel resentful about someone, my mind will plot how to hurt them. I don't know about your mind. I'm going to get back to them. They're not going to do that to me. Blah, 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 blah. And then, oh yeah, that's interesting, Viradhammo. Okay. That's avijja paccaya sankhara. That's delusion, right? And say, oh, but then I go back, oh, resentment feels this way. Yeah, and then the mind wants to take it to something pleasurable. So resentment is unpleasant. Where does it want to go? It wants to go to pleasant. What's pleasant? They're going to fall off a cliff, or they're going to get COVID, or whatever you want. And that's actually a pleasant feeling, because revenge is a pleasant kind of, it's not a pleasant activity. It leads to hell. But the mind is tricky, isn't it? It does that. So then you notice, no, come back. Come back. Oh, resentment feels this way. That's unpleasant. That's the itching and scratching. That's the itching and scratching. No, stay with the itching. Itching like, I want to kill them. No. Resentment feels this way. Resentment feels this way. Then the resentment falls away. The heart opens. The mind's not cynical. And eventually there can be forgiveness. Maybe not trust. Fair enough. You don't have to trust the person, but you can forgive in your own heart, because that's a kind of letting go. If you say to yourself, I should forgive, that's just a tyranny. That's an inner tyranny. That's not mindfulness. That's some kind of idealized thing of what you should be. No, I feel resentment. I got betrayed. The person's a crook. Or and whatever. So that's real honesty. It feels that way. So again, with that question, I don't know how, where it's coming from, but it's troubling. It's a troubling question, Sangha members. But realize that we had it, like when we started monasteries, say, when I was up in Northumberland, in Harnham, I was there for 2 years. And then we had this idea that we should replace the abbots of monasteries every 2 years for some reason. And what would happen is that I would leave, and then another Ajahn would come. And then the people that like me, some stayed, but some didn't because they didn't like the next abbot. It wasn't the same personality. So then a whole population of people would leave, and a new population would come up. Oh, I like the abbot now. I didn't like the old one. Or I don't like the new one, I'm leaving. So this monk would stay for 2 years, and we get another monk coming in, right? And then a population of people, oh, I don't like the new abbot. I want another one. And they would leave. So sometimes it's just simply like a personality thing. You don't like the style of thing. Like maybe the person is just very, whatever it might be. So that's the way it is. But if it's immoral, if it's hurtful, if it's wrong speech, then you need to protect yourself, but also maybe address it to the Sangha. That can be very helpful. How can I reach the first stage of jhana? So this question is a very technical question, and I've asked Yom Aw to post an article which I passed around, I think, last year before, and so that will be posted. And it's what you've always wanted to know. There it is. There, very diligent Yom Aw. And in that article, it's complicated article. It takes some understanding of the Pali. So if you don't have the understanding, but just in terms of, if you want to read that, the way it's structured is it has a lot of footnotes, very extensive footnotes, which are interesting. And it has a lot of appendices, maybe like, I don't know, 10. So the whole thing is quite a bit of volume. But if you just read the main text, don't touch the footnotes, and don't touch the appendices, it's less daunting. It's less kind of overwhelming. So I would ask the person that asked this question, try to read that. It'll take some work, and try to get it, because the word jhana is to some extent controversial, and I don't want to go there right now. I don't want to bring up that complexity, but that article serves you very well. But again, leave the footnotes alone, leave the appendices alone. It's probably only 20 pages, and then get your head around it, because it takes some understanding of the Pali. Tanichan, what do you think of the following quote? Be compassionate to all, but realize that it is not your duty to help everyone. That's very true, because the difference between being compassionate and thinking you have to solve everyone's problems is vast. Compassion doesn't mean that you can solve anyone's problems. And you've often maybe heard me speak about this with my mother, that with my mother, I could, in caring for her, I could, metta bhavana was easy, karuna bhavana was easy, mudita was easy. In other words, love was easy with her. But upekkha, the sense of peaceful coexistence with her predicament, was difficult because, and it took me, it's obvious, because I didn't want her to suffer. And that not wanting didn't help, because there was compassion, there was care, there was love. So as long as I didn't recognize I don't want mom to suffer, I would get tense and anxious. And then she would get tense and anxious because she didn't want me to see that she was suffering. So we're kind of both hiding out from our anxieties. And then I said, well, I can't cure your karma, Mom. And she didn't ask me to. I can't, you're old, you're 95 years old, and you've got osteoporosis. And I was speaking to myself. I said, all I can do is care for you. You have your karma, I have my karma. And Mom never asked me, she didn't expect me. She was courageous and brave and so on. And once I found that, I said, yeah, I can be compassionate, but she has to bear her own suffering. She has to solve that problem in her own mind. And I could encourage that. And so what happens in areas of compassion, people get burnt out because they don't know how to leave it alone, I guess. No, that person has to figure this out. I can't do everything. And so they worry. they worry or they become overly concerned. So upekkha, or equanimity, it's not indifferent. It's peaceful coexistence with love and the way things are. A hard lesson to learn, especially like if you have kids or grandkids and things like that. But kids have to learn, grandkids have to learn, parents have to die, I have to die. So it's an important, especially if you're in a caregiving profession, if you don't find that one, you can get really burnt out. Social workers are often talking about that. And if it's just too difficult, like you just care too much about things, and that's the wrong livelihood, or the livelihood has to be lessened of that kind of activity. How important is it to have a strict schedule? I think I answered that with my sense of that it's like a work ethic, an enjoyable work ethic, right? Rather than just, no, you have to do this now. Like morning meditation for me is really interesting. It wasn't when I was a young monk. It was horrible. So the discipline part is, kind of like if I hadn't been at Luangpor, and if I didn't have to go to morning meditation or sit through 4-hour desanas from Ajahn Chah, I wouldn't have done it. This is too difficult. So structure I found tremendously helpful because my mind was so restless and untrained. And so the structure of a community doing this work kind of put me in the place. Once I was in the place of just having to be there, then my interest and the kind of my nature is to like a challenge, to like a difficult challenge. And my mind was very difficult, so it was a challenge. It was okay. And part of it was just kind of being stuck there and saying, well, you got no choice. You got to stay here or you can disrobe. Those are your options. I don't think I'll stay. And so that's very hard to get for lay people, that structural help, that structural assistance to do the work. How you do that in lay life is best to ask other lay friends. How do you do it? How do you actually get on the cushion every morning? How do you actually do that? But if you don't have some sense of structure and putting the world down, that's the thing, isn't it? Putting the world down, giving the mind space. If you don't have a way of doing that, the world is just going to grab you, and the worldly dharmas will just keep you spinning around. So Kalyanamitta, group meditations, retreats, these kinds of things is very, very helpful. If you have the idea of strict schedule, you can be so strict on yourself that you do it for a year and then you don't do it for the rest of your life. Because it's so horrible. It's so horrible to do. So you want to do it more like, if you're working out in the gym and you want to do 10 reps of some exercise, you kind of take it as a challenge, don't you? But if you make it so bad that okay, you do it once or twice, but then it's just the most horrible experience of your life, and you're never going to go to the gym again, and you're just going to eat ice cream and drink coffee, then that's counterproductive. So you want enough structure that it's good for you, that you like the challenge. You like the challenge, but not like strict, thou must meditate. So it's personal that way. Dear Luangpor, can you kindly elaborate what do the last few lines of the Metta Sutta mean, not holding on to fixed views? That's interesting, isn't it? In that sutta. And so it's all about loving kindness and what you should do to be a good person, to be a kind person. And it goes on and on and on. And also throws this in. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one is not born again into this world. And so what's that about? Well, holding fixed views. So views are not wrong, they're natural. I have views about gophers. And if you then, I have views about bird life. And then a birder comes to me and says, actually, you're all wrong there. actually the reproductive cycle of robins is like this, and you've got it all wrong. Huh? I say, oh, really? So there's another viewpoint. I can check it up. I can go to Google, say, are these guys right? I can look at my bird book, but I'm not holding to a fixed view. I have a view from my experience. That makes sense. A birder comes along, a professional ornithologist, is it? Yes. Comes along and says, well, no, you're wrong. Now, if I have a fixed view, then of course I get very defensive or aggressive, or I walk away thinking the guy's an idiot. I don't like him or whatever. That's holding to a fixed view. And you can see how like people like in politics or around the vaccine or things like that, people that really hold to fixed views, they oftentimes have to shove them in your face. Tell you what the truth is. This is the truth. You must believe in this. Isn't that the most obnoxious thing you experience as a human being? Someone insisting that their viewpoint is right and trying to convert you to. When you get that in religion, right? Someone says to you, we had the most horrible experience, not the horrible, it was a Kanchakun Panyananda he's passed away long ago. It's a very beautiful monk from Bangkok area, and he used to visit us and support us a lot. And he's quite famous in Thailand. And he was walking with, I think, me and Ajahn Jayasaro across a park in a city, I think Dunedin or Christchurch in New Zealand, South Island, New Zealand. And we're walking across, and this guy comes up to us, and Luangpor Viradhammo is very open-hearted. Oh, hello, how are you doing? And this guy was a born-again Christian, and he starts to tell Luangpor Viradhammo that he's ignorant. He's a fool for believing what he's believing. And I wanted to punch the guy in the face. I said, you're the nerve. This guy's a saint. And you're coming and laying your trip on him, right? That's the extreme of by holding to fixed views. It is totally lacking in metta, totally lacking in any kind of sensitivity. So that's the extreme. But also, holding to fixed views is you usually are also holding to a strong sense of self. I am right and they're wrong. My view is right and they're wrong. So my view of vaccines or my view of politics or my view of whatever, I am right and they're wrong. Now, there can be a right and wrong for sure. For sure, there's accuracy in views, for sure. But what is it about holding to fixed views that is egotistical, right? That's the part that is destructive, and that's the part that keeps you bound to samsara. So if you see that I'm holding to a fixed view, and you still think your view is correct because that's what your readings tell you, but you don't hold on to it, then you don't need it. You don't find security in intellect and viewpoints. You have a freedom to have views, but if someone said to me, I don't believe the Buddha ever lived. Oh, great, good for you. Or I don't believe in rebirth. Okay, great, fine, good on you. I think monks are all charlatans. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay, good, yeah. I think you're just a lazy bum, Viradhammo. You should get a job. People have said that to me. I said, oh, yeah, maybe I should get a job. Okay, thank you. It's like, I'm free. I mean, I might feel insulted and a bit of aggression, but I'm free. But if I really hold into a view, a Buddhist view, that there is rebirth, for sure, the Buddha did exist, and my whole life is invested in this, and then someone says to me, no, what do you mean? No, it's true. And what's the point of that? And that's holding to fixed views. So whenever you find that you have to convert someone else to a viewpoint, it might be from compassion, it might be from a good place. It might be from ego. It might be from whatever. But you can see how if I'm not going to be reborn into the sense realm, not reborn in terms of past and future lives, but right now in the sense of preoccupation. If I'm going to abide in the witnessing heart and abide as peace. If my mind always grabs views and holds on to them, then I'm always in this swirl of samsara. Huh? So it's not against views, it's by holding to fixed views. And it's very interesting if you then look at that sutta, you chant it through, you go through all those lovely suggestions of heart and kindness, and by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one will not be born in this world again. So see this world as this whole world of thought and ego, etc., that goes on. And then like Piro's reflection, which I was doing it with Vita's group, by suspending judgment, by attending to phenomena and things as they are, by confining oneself to phenomena and objects as they are, by not asserting anything definite as to how things really are, one can attain an imperturbable peace of mind. By suspending judgment. That's a very interesting reflection on viewpoints. You know, you can be judging someone. I say, well, by suspending judgment, it's like this. I come back to it's like this. And so there are different ways to come to that peace of mind, which is not a viewpoint. It's an existential knowing experience. Be patient with me. One more, okay? In this practice, do we need to keep knowing the awareness itself or the stillness of awareness simultaneously with what we are experiencing doing? For example, while listening to sound, apart from knowing the sound, one is aware of the awareness itself. I found it a bit difficult to do when listening to the Dhamma compared to other type of hearing, like bird sound, for instance. On other occasions, is it all right? In other words, can I concentrate on objects? For sure, you have to. So if you're listening to a Dhamma talk, you have this sense of awareness, but you want to get the language and kind of figure it out. When I'm in the workshop, I'm concentrating. And we do that a lot. Otherwise, we couldn't function. But what I'm just suggesting is that there's a very interesting exploration of awareness itself, which we don't do very often. And to give time to that, you need some calmness of mind. If you have some calmness of mind, I think quite naturally you begin to see, oh, I know that I know. Oh, what's that feel like? I know that I know. And you become interested in that, knowing that you know, and that's very subtle. But you can't do that all the time. You can't do that reflection. That reflection will take you to a place where it sort of happens over time, but that has to be done deliberately first in a setting where you don't need to pay attention to the stove and the cooking rice or the car and the red light or whatever you need to pay attention to. So all I'm suggesting is there are times when the engagement with sense experience is not necessary. And the curious thing that you find in Buddhist practices is you'll find these suggestions of be the knowing, know that you know, shikantaza, choiceless awareness. You find this throughout Buddhist practice. And it's a kind of interest that comes, I think, perhaps later on. I'm not sure, but you start to get interest in consciousness itself, in awareness itself. And then there's no language. Then you're just in the silence. Okay, that's it. That's all. I hope that wasn't too much. Nice to hang out with you.